Admiral Jiwoo Park stood in the Grand Council chambers of Valthor Prime. The massive hall stretched high above her head, with walls made of crystal that reflected light in rainbow colors. Around her sat representatives from 12 powerful alien species. Each one looked down at her from their elevated seats. Their eyes showed nothing but contempt. Jiwoo had been coming to these chambers for 5 years now. Every single time she asked for help. Every single time they said no. Earth wanted fair trade deals. The Council refused. Earth wanted protection agreements. The Council laughed. Earth wanted to be treated as equals. The Council treated humans like children who did not understand how the galaxy worked. Today was different. Today, Jiwoo was not asking for help. Today, she was demanding justice. Behind her, Dr. Yuna Kim held a data tablet with shaking hands. The tablet contained evidence of something terrible, something that made Jiwoo's blood run cold every time she thought about it. Next to Yuna stood Junior Ambassador Hyun-Soo Lee, his young face set in hard lines. He had seen the footage too. They all had. 3 weeks ago, the human colony on planet Kepler 442b had been destroyed. The colony was called New Sol. 3 million people lived there. Families with children, teachers and doctors, farmers and engineers. They were building a new home on a distant world, far from Earth. Then the Vrexian ships came. Lieutenant Dae-hyun Cho had been the defense coordinator for New Sol. He watched from the command center as Vrexian warships appeared in orbit. At first he thought it might be a mistake. Maybe they were just passing through. He tried to contact them. He sent messages saying the colony was protected by galactic law. The Vrexians did not respond with words. They responded with weapons. Plasma beams rained down from space. They hit the cities first. Buildings that took years to build were turned to ash in seconds. Dae-hyun ordered everyone to evacuate. Mothers grabbed their children and ran for the ships. Old people helped each other toward the spaceports. Everyone was running, screaming, crying. The evacuation ships lifted off packed with refugees. Dae-hyun watched the sensors and felt hope for one brief moment. The ships were getting away. Then the Vrexian warships changed their aim. They started shooting at the evacuation ships. One by one, the ships carrying women and children exploded in space. Dae-hyun's hands froze on his controls. He could not believe what he was seeing. These were not soldiers. These were not military targets. These were families trying to escape. Before the command center was destroyed, Dae-hyun managed to send one last transmission to Earth. It contained video footage of everything. The unprovoked attack, the systematic destruction of the cities, the murder of innocent people in evacuation ships. 3 million lives ended in 4 hours. Now Jiwoo stood before the Galactic Council with that evidence. She activated the holographic display in the center of the chamber. The council members watched the footage in silence. They saw the Vrexian ships fire on defenseless civilians. They saw children dying in the cold of space. They saw everything. When the footage ended, Jiwoo spoke. Her voice was steady and cold. She demanded that the council acknowledge this crime. She demanded that they punish the Vrexian Dominion. She demanded reparations for the families who lost everything. The Vrexian ambassador rose from his seat. He was a massive creature with scales and too many teeth. He looked at Jiwoo and started laughing. Actually laughing. The sound echoed through the chamber. Other council members joined in. They thought it was funny. The Vrexian ambassador said that New Sol was built in disputed territory. He said humans should not have been there in the first place. He said it was humanity's own fault for being weak. His words were like poison. Each sentence made Jiwoo's anger burn hotter. High Speaker Torvin, the leader of the council, raised his hand for silence. He was an ancient being who had led the council for 200 years. He looked at Jiwoo with cold eyes and spoke words that would change everything. He said that humanity needed to accept their place in the galaxy. He said humans were a young species who did not understand how things worked. He said the council would not interfere in Vrexian affairs. Then he called for a vote. 12 species voted. All 12 voted to dismiss humanity's petition. Not one single voice spoke for justice. Not one single being stood up for the 3 million dead. The council had decided that human lives did not matter. Jiwoo stood very still. Yuna looked at her with worried eyes. Hyun-Soo put his hand near his weapon, ready for anything. The chamber fell silent, waiting to see what the humans would do. Would they accept this judgment? Would they leave quietly like they always did? Jiwoo took one step forward. Her boots clicked on the crystal floor. The sound seemed very loud in the quiet chamber. She looked up at the council members, meeting each of their eyes in turn. When she spoke, her voice was soft, but somehow everyone could hear it perfectly. She said that humanity was giving the council 30 days. 30 days to acknowledge the crime. 30 days to punish the Vrexian Dominion. 30 days to pay reparations to the survivors. If the council did not do these things, there would be consequences. The chamber erupted in laughter again. The Vrexian ambassador was laughing so hard he could barely breathe. He said that the entire human fleet could not even damage one Vrexian warship. He said humanity's threats were as empty as their courage. Other council members nodded and smiled. High Speaker Torvin waved his hand dismissively. The session was over. The council had spoken. The humans could leave now. Their petition was denied. Their ultimatum was rejected. Their dead would not be avenged. Jiwoo turned and walked toward the exit. Yuna and Hyunsu followed her. As they reached the massive doors, Hyunsu glanced back at the admiral. What he saw made his blood run cold. Jiwoo was smiling. It was not a happy smile. It was not a sad smile. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret. The smile of someone who had been waiting for exactly this moment. The smile of someone who had just been given permission to do something terrible. The three humans left the council chambers and walked to their ship. None of them spoke during the journey back to Earth. They did not need to speak. They all knew what came next. The Galactic Council had made their decision. They chose to protect the strong and ignore the weak. They chose power over justice. They chose to let the murder of 3 million humans go unpunished. They thought they knew humanity. They thought humans were weak and forgettable. They thought wrong. The Council had 30 days to change their minds. Admiral Jiwoo Park knew they would not. She was counting on it, because for the last 20 years, humanity had been preparing for exactly this scenario. They had been building something in secret, something that would show the galaxy what happened when you pushed humans too far. The countdown had begun, 30 days until the Council learned the truth. 30 days until everything changed. 30 days until humanity's retaliation sent terror throughout those same council chambers. The galaxy was about to discover that humans never forgot an injustice, and they never forgave those who murdered their children. Far beyond the orbit of Pluto, in the frozen darkness of the Oort cloud, something massive floated in silence. It had been there for 20 years. The Galactic Council did not know about it. The other alien species did not know about it. Even most humans did not know about it. It was called Project Requiem. General Taimin Yang stood in the command center, watching screens that showed ships. Hundreds and hundreds of ships. But these were not like normal warships. They were small and dark. They had strange angles that seemed to swallow light. When the sensors looked at them, the sensors saw nothing. These ships were ghosts. 20 years ago, after humanity joined the Galactic Council, Earth's military leaders had a meeting. They looked at the other alien species. They saw how those species treated weaker civilizations. They saw the arrogance and cruelty. And they made a decision. They decided to prepare for war. Not a war they wanted. Not a war they would start. But a war they knew would come eventually. Because bullies never stopped being bullies until someone made them stop. Chief Engineer Bo-Ra Kang walked through the construction bay, checking systems. She was responsible for the Ghost Drive. It was humanity's greatest secret. The drive pushed ships through a layer of space that existed below normal space. Regular sensors could not detect it. Radar could not find it. Even gravity sensors could not track it. A ship using the Ghost Drive was completely invisible. Bo-Ra remembered the first test. They had flown a ship with the Ghost Drive right past a Vrexian patrol. The Vrexians never saw anything. The ship could have destroyed them easily. But that was not the point. The point was to stay hidden, to watch and learn and wait. In another section of the facility, Commander Jae-Hyun-im was working with the weapons. Not regular weapons. These were relativistic kill vehicles. That was a complicated name for a simple but terrifying idea. Take a small object, accelerate it to almost the speed of light, then let it hit something. At those speeds, even a small rock became more powerful than a nuclear bomb. The energy release was enormous. Shields could not stop it. Armor could not stop it. Nothing could stop it. Once you launched a relativistic kill vehicle, its target was already dead. They just did not know it yet. Jae-Hyun had spent 10 years perfecting the targeting systems. The vehicles needed to be launched days or even weeks before they hit their targets. You had to calculate where the target would be, not where it was. One mistake and the weapon would miss by millions of kilometers. But Jaehyun had not made any mistakes. Dr. Sunmi Ryu was in the communication center. She had solved a problem that other species thought was impossible. She had made quantum entanglement work for communication. Two particles connected at the quantum level would react to each other instantly, no matter how far apart they were. No delay, no lag. Perfect coordination across unlimited distances. This meant the human fleet could act as one unit even when spread across an entire star system. Every ship knew exactly what every other ship was doing. Every captain could communicate with command instantly. It was like having one mind controlling thousands of bodies. The 30 days passed slowly. The Galactic Council did nothing. They did not apologize. They did not punish the Vrexians. They did not pay reparations. They did exactly what Admiral Jiwoo knew they would do. They ignored humanity's ultimatum completely. On day 25, Fleet Commander Min Ji-hong gathered all the ship captains for a briefing. It was done through quantum communication, so all the captains appeared as holograms in the command center. There were hundreds of them. Each one had trained for years for this moment. Minji explained the plan. It was simple but devastating. The fleet would be divided into 3 groups. Alpha Strike Group would destroy Vrexian military installations. Beta Interdiction would cut off their supply lines. Gamma Decapitation would eliminate their command structure. Captain Wanshik Nam commanded Alpha Strike. His job was to destroy the Vrexian ability to fight. Shipyards, weapons platforms, defense stations, everything that made the Vrexian military strong would be turned into debris. Captain Yoonji Bae led Beta Interdiction. She would take out fuel depots, ammunition storage, repair facilities. Without supplies, the remaining Vrexian ships would be helpless. They would drift in space, unable to fight or even move. Commander Sang Woo-jeon had the hardest mission. Gamma Decapitation meant targeting the Vrexian leaders, not civilians, not innocent people, only those who gave the orders, those who commanded the attack on New Seoul, those who laughed in the council chambers. While the fleet prepared, human intelligence agents were already in place. Young Ho Shin had lived in Vrexian territory for 5 years. He looked different now. Surgery had changed his appearance. He spoke their language perfectly. He had friends among them. They trusted him. They had no idea he was human. Young Ho sent detailed information back to Earth, where the military bases were located, when the guard shifts changed, what security systems they used, which commanders would be where and when. Every piece of information was another nail in the Vrexian coffin. Agent Hai-Jin Park had done something even more dangerous. She had infiltrated the Vrexian Admiralty. She worked as a translator. The Vrexians thought she was from a minor species they had conquered. She sat in their war rooms. She listened to their plans. She copied their files. And she sent everything to Earth. Intelligence analyst Dong Hyun Kwan took all that information and built a complete picture of Vrexian military capabilities. He knew where every ship was. He knew where every weapon was stored. He knew where every weak point existed. And he gave all that information to the fleet commanders. The Vrexians never screened for human spies. Why would they? Humans were weak. Humans were unimportant. Humans could not possibly threaten them. That arrogance was exactly what humanity had counted on. On day 30, at exactly 4 a.m. Galactic Standard Time, General Tae Min Yang stood before a communication screen. On the other end was Admiral Jiwoo Park. She was still on Valthor Prime watching the Galactic Council. Her face was calm, but her eyes were hard. The general asked if she was certain. There would be no going back after this. Once they started, humanity would be at war with one of the galaxy's most powerful species. Other species might join against them. Earth itself might be attacked. Jiwoo looked at him for a long moment. Then she spoke 3 words that changed everything. She said, "Requiem is approved." General Tae Min Yang nodded and closed the communication. He turned to his operations officer and gave the order. The operations officer's hands were shaking as he pressed the buttons. Red lights turned green across the command center. Every screen showed the same thing. Systems active, weapons armed, drives online. The Ghost Fleet began to move. Thousands of ships dropped into subspace, becoming invisible to every sensor in the galaxy. They moved faster than light, heading toward Vrexian territory. Inside each ship, human crews checked their weapons one final time. Some prayed, some looked at pictures of new soul victims, some simply sat in silence. They were not doing this for glory. They were not doing this for conquest. They were doing this for justice, for 3 million people who would never see another sunrise, for children who would never grow up, for families torn apart by Vrexian cruelty. The Galactic Council had made their choice. They chose to protect the powerful and ignore the weak. They chose to let murder go unpunished. They chose to laugh at humanity's pain. Now humanity would show them the cost of that choice. The Vrexian Dominion slept peacefully that night. Their leaders felt safe behind their powerful fleet. Their military commanders were confident in their strength. Their people believed they were untouchable. They had no idea that death was already on the way. Silent, invisible, unstoppable, and absolutely merciless. The attack began at 17 different locations simultaneously. The Ghost Fleet emerged from subspace without warning. One moment the space was empty. The next moment thousands of human ships appeared at weapons range. At Vrex's prime, the Vrexian homeworld, Admiral Torex was drinking his morning stimulant. He commanded the home defense fleet. 23 massive capital ships orbited the planet, each one capable of destroying an entire city with a single shot. Torex felt completely safe. His fleet was invincible. Then his sensor officer screamed. 3 objects were approaching at nearly the speed of light. The sensors barely had time to detect them before they hit. The first relativistic kill vehicle struck the orbital shipyard. The kinetic energy release was equivalent to a star-going supernova. The shipyard simply ceased to exist. 7 capital ships that were docked there were vaporized instantly. The second vehicle hit the weapons platform on the dark side of the planet. The explosion lit up the night sky. Millions of Vrexians looked up and saw a second sun burning, where their most powerful defense station used to be. The third vehicle destroyed the military communication hub. In one instant, the Vrexian defense fleet lost the ability to coordinate with each other. Every ship was suddenly alone, unable to call for help or receive orders. Before Admiral Torex could even process what was happening, the human ships attacked. Captain Wanshik Nam's Alpha Strike Group had trained for this moment for years. Each human corvette was small and fast. The Vrexian capital ships tried to track them, but the humans moved like a swarm of insects. Their weapons were precise and devastating. The human ships did not try to fight the Vrexian vessels directly. Instead, they targeted specific systems, weapons arrays, shield generators, engine cores. Each strike was surgical. Each shot disabled rather than destroyed. The massive Vrexian warships drifted helplessly in space, unable to fight back. Tactical Officer So-Yeon Han coordinated the drone attacks from her ship. Thousands of small hunter-killer drones swarmed around the Vrexian defense stations. Each drone carried a microfusion warhead. They were too small and too fast for the station defenses to track. They attached themselves to critical points and detonated. One by one, the defense stations went dark. Their shields failed. Their weapons stopped firing. The lights went out. The Vrexians inside evacuated in escape pods, watching helplessly as their mighty stations became floating scrap metal. Across Vrexian space, the same scene repeated 17 times. Captain Yunji Bei's Beta Interdiction Group struck supply depots and fuel stations. Massive explosions lit up the darkness as military supplies were destroyed. But again, the humans were careful. They made sure all personnel had evacuated before the strikes. They even transmitted the evacuation routes to Vrexian rescue teams. This was not about killing. This was about sending a message. Commander Sangwoo John led Gamma Decapitation Group to the military command centers. These were hidden facilities deep in asteroid fields and on remote moons. The Vrexians thought they were safe. They thought no one knew where these bases were located. But Young Ho Shin had found them. Hyjin Park had given the exact coordinates. And now human weapons turned those secret bases into craters. The entire attack lasted exactly 1 hour. In 60 minutes, humanity destroyed the Vrexian Dominion's ability to wage war. The casualty count was staggering but precise. Over 2 million Vrexian military personnel were killed. Not one single civilian died. Every strike had been calculated to avoid population centers. Every weapon had been aimed at military targets only. As the smoke cleared and rescue operations began, Admiral Jiwoo Park broadcast a message on all Galactic Council frequencies. Her face appeared on every screen in council space. Her voice was cold and clear. She listed every target that had been destroyed. Every shipyard, every weapons platform, every command center. She gave the exact casualty numbers. Then she explained why. 3 million human civilians had been murdered at New Sol. The Galactic Council did nothing. The Vrexian Dominion laughed. Now the debt was paid. 3 million civilians for their entire military machine. Not revenge, justice. Jiwoo's voice did not rise. She did not sound angry. She sounded like a judge reading a sentence. She said that humanity had demonstrated remarkable restraint. They could have destroyed the Vrexian homeworld. They could have killed billions. Instead, they surgically removed the Dominion's ability to harm others while leaving their people unharmed. Then she delivered her final statement. Humanity demanded formal recognition of war crimes, immediate reparations to New Sol survivors, and permanent human representation on the Council's Security Committee. The alternative was simple. The Ghost Fleet would visit other species who supported the Vrexians. One by one, every military force that stood against humanity would be dismantled. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, beings from 1,000 different species sat in stunned silence. They had just watched humanity do the impossible. The Vrexian Dominion had been one of the 3 most powerful military forces in known space, and humans had destroyed it in 1 hour. On Valthor Prime, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. High Speaker Torvin looked at the tactical displays with disbelief. His hands were shaking. He had dismissed humanity's ultimatum. He had laughed at their threats. Now he was looking at the complete destruction of Vrexian military power. Military analyst Kyung-mi-oh presented her assessment to the assembled council members. Her voice was steady, but her face was pale. She explained that humanity had deployed technology that was decades ahead of current galactic standards. The Ghost Drive alone changed everything. Ships that could not be detected could not be fought. But there was something even more terrifying. The humans had held back. Intelligence reports suggested they had not used their most powerful weapons. The Ghost Fleet that attacked Vrexian space was only a portion of their total military strength. And they were still developing new technologies. Ambassador Junho Choi stood before the council chambers. He was younger than Jiwoo and less intimidating in appearance. But his words carried the full weight of Earth's military might behind them. He repeated humanity's demands calmly and clearly. Then he added one more detail. The Ghost Fleet had not left Vrexian space. Thousands of human warships were still there, weapons hot, waiting for the Council's response. They were invisible to sensors. They could strike at any moment, and no one could stop them. The council members looked at each other. Fear was written on every face. They had thought they ruled the galaxy. They had thought they were untouchable. Now they understood the truth. They had been safe only because humanity allowed them to be safe. The Vrexian ambassador, the same one who had laughed in the council chambers, was not laughing anymore. His species had just lost their entire military in 1 brutal hour. His people were defenseless, and it was his government's cruelty that had brought this disaster upon them. High Speaker Torvin tried to maintain his authority. He called for order. He said the council needed to discuss this situation carefully, but his voice cracked. Everyone could hear the fear. Then something happened that had never happened before in council history. One of the minor species representatives stood up. She was from the Etherian Collective, a peaceful species that had always been ignored by the council. Speaker Ji-Hai Moon's voice was quiet but firm. She said that the council should accept humanity's demands immediately. The humans were not asking for anything unreasonable. They wanted justice for murdered civilians. They wanted a voice in galactic governance. They wanted the same rights that every other species enjoyed, and they had demonstrated both overwhelming power and remarkable mercy. Other minor species representatives nodded. For the first time, they had hope. Humanity had shown that the powerful could be held accountable, that bullies could be stopped, that justice was possible, but not everyone agreed. The Tholaxian Empire, militaristic and proud, refused to be intimidated. Their representative, War Marshal Seung-ho Park, demanded retaliation. He called for a united fleet to attack Earth itself. He said humanity needed to be taught a lesson. The other council members listened to his words. Some nodded. Some looked thoughtful. They were considering it. They were actually considering attacking humanity after seeing what happened to the Vrexians. Ambassador Junho Choi simply smiled. It was the same smile Admiral Jiwoo had worn when she left the council chambers 30 days ago. The smile of someone who knew a secret. The smile of someone who was ready for whatever came next. Because if the Galactic Council chose war, humanity would show them exactly what they were capable of when they stopped holding back. The Galactic Council was divided. Some members wanted to accept humanity's demands. Others wanted revenge. The debates went on for days. Voices rose in anger. Fists pounded on tables. The unity that had held the council together for centuries was cracking. Diplomatic envoy Myung-hee Seo tried to find a middle path. She was a skilled negotiator who had resolved conflicts between species for decades. She proposed a compromise. The council would acknowledge that mistakes were made. They would provide some reparations. They would give humanity a seat on a minor committee. Not everything the humans wanted, but something. Ambassador Junho Choi listened to the proposal politely. Then he rejected it. There would be no compromise. Humanity had stated their terms clearly. The council would accept all demands or face the consequences. There was no middle ground, not anymore. The Tholaxian Empire would not tolerate this disrespect. War Marshal Sung-Ho Park was a human who had left Earth 20 years ago. He disagreed with humanity's peaceful approach to galactic politics. He believed in strength and conquest. So he joined the Tholaxians, who valued warriors above all else. Now he stood before the Tholaxian High Command and urged them to act. He knew humanity's capabilities. He had served in Earth's military before his defection. But he also believed the Tholaxians could win if they struck fast and hard. He argued that the Ghost Fleet was not as large as everyone feared, that humanity had used most of their resources against the Vrexians, that now was the time to attack. The Tholaxian commanders listened. They were warriors who had never been defeated. The idea that small Earth could threaten them was insulting. They decided to teach humanity a lesson. They would assemble the largest battle fleet in a century and destroy Earth itself. 300 warships gathered at the Tholaxian home system. Massive dreadnoughts that could crack planets. Cruisers armed with weapons that could sterilize continents. Carriers filled with thousands of fighter craft. It was a force capable of conquering entire star systems. The fleet departed toward Earth with great ceremony. The Tholaxian people celebrated. Their enemies would be crushed. The upstart humans would learn their place. The natural order would be restored. On Earth, Defense Coordinator In-Soo Jong watched. The Tholaxian fleet approached through long-range sensors. He did not look worried. He did not scramble Earth's defense forces. He did not even put the home fleet on alert. Instead, he sent a single encrypted message. The Ghost Fleet, still in Vrexian space, vanished. One moment they were there. The next moment, they were gone. Every human ship activated their ghost drive and dropped into subspace. The Vrexians, monitoring them nervously, suddenly saw empty space where thousands of warships had been. The Tholaxian fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system. Admiral Krivor, commanding from the flagship Worldbreaker, broadcast demands for humanity's immediate surrender. Earth would be placed under Tholaxian control. All human military forces would be disbanded. Anyone who resisted would be executed. There was no response from Earth. The planet seemed defenseless. A few orbital stations, some patrol ships. Nothing that could challenge the massive Tholaxian fleet. Admiral Krivor smiled. This would be easy. Then the human ships appeared. They came from every direction at once. Above, below, from the sides, from behind. Thousands of Ghost Fleet corvettes materialized at point-blank range. The Tholaxians had no warning. Their sensors had detected nothing until the humans were already in weapons range. Fleet Admiral Yun-Young Huang commanded the defense from her flagship. She had been preparing for this moment since the Tholaxians left their home system. She knew exactly where they would emerge from faster-than-light travel. She knew exactly how they would position their ships, and she had placed her fleet accordingly. The battle lasted 17 minutes. It was not really a battle. It was an execution. The human ships deployed weapons the galaxy had never seen before. Quantum disruption torpedoes phased through the Tholaxian shields and collapsed them from the inside. Gravity well generators created localized black holes that crushed ships under their own mass. Directed electromagnetic pulse weapons fried every electronic system simultaneously. The Thalaxian warships tried to fight back. They fired their massive cannons. But the human ships were too small and too fast. They dodged between the shots like dancers. When a Thalaxian weapon did connect, it often hit another Thalaxian ship. The human fleet had positioned themselves perfectly to use the enemy's own firepower against them. Admiral Krivor watched his fleet die around him. Ship after ship went dark. Explosions lit up space. Escape pods launched desperately as vessels broke apart. In less than 20 minutes, 300 of the most powerful warships ever built were reduced to floating debris. Then the human ships stopped firing. Captain Yujin Ha broadcast coordinates of all Thalaxian life pods to their rescue forces. She transmitted safe routes through the debris field. She even provided medical information about injured survivors. And then the ghost fleet withdrew, vanishing back into subspace as suddenly as they had appeared. But before leaving, Captain Yujin sent one final message to the Thalaxian survivors. Her voice was cold and clear. This was their only warning. Attack humanity again, and next time the fleet would not stop at military targets. Next time the ghost fleet would visit the Thalaxian homeworld itself. The message was transmitted on all council frequencies. Every species heard it. Every government understood what it meant. Humanity had just destroyed 300 warships in 17 minutes while suffering 0 casualties. They had demonstrated weapons technology that made existing defenses obsolete. And they had done it while still showing mercy to defeated enemies. The Galactic Council reconvened in the Grand Chambers on Valthor Prime. The mood had completely changed. The arrogance was gone. The mockery was gone. Now there was only fear. Security Chief Wu Jin Song presented his analysis. It was devastating. Humanity had been testing Council species for decades. Every human ship that was captured provided false information about human capabilities. Every battle humans lost was actually intelligence gathering. Every time humans seemed weak, they were learning their enemies' tactics and weaknesses. While other species became complacent with their technology, humans never stopped innovating. They built weapons in secret. They developed new sciences. They prepared for the day when patience would end and action would be necessary. And now that day had come. For the first time in Galactic Council history, a junior member spoke in the main chambers. Ha Yun Kang was human, appointed as a symbolic representative years ago. The council never listened to her before, but now everyone hung on her words. She explained what made humanity dangerous. It was not their weapons, though those were formidable. It was not their ships, though those were advanced. It was not even their tactical brilliance, though that was undeniable. What made humanity truly dangerous was memory. Humans never forgot an injustice. They would wait decades, even generations, for the right moment. But they never forgot. The council had dismissed them as weak and patient. They mistook humanity's restraint for inability to act. That was the fatal error. Ha-Un's voice was soft, but it carried through the silent chamber. She asked the council members a simple question. Did they want to find out what else humanity was capable of? Did they want to discover what weapons humans had not yet revealed? Did they want to test whether human patience had truly run out, or did they want to choose wisdom over pride, justice over power, peace over war? High Speaker Torvin sat in his elevated chair and looked down at the human representative. He was ancient and had led the council for 2 centuries. He had seen civilizations rise and fall, and he recognized when a fundamental shift in power had occurred. He stood slowly and made a decision that would change the galaxy forever. He would accept humanity's demands. All of them, without negotiation, without compromise, because the alternative was watching humanity systematically dismantle every military force that opposed them. The vote was called. This time, when the council voted on humanity's petition, the result was very different. 12 voices spoke. 12 votes in favor, 0 against. The decision was unanimous. Humanity would receive everything they demanded: formal apology, reparations, Security Council representation, and most importantly, recognition that human lives mattered just as much as any other species. In the chambers that had once echoed with laughter at human suffering, there was now only silence. The terror that humanity's retaliation had sent through those halls would not be forgotten. The galaxy had learned a lesson written in fire and blood. Never mistake patience for weakness. Never ignore cries for justice, and never ever underestimate humanity. High Speaker Torvin made the longest walk of his life. He left the Grand Council chambers and traveled to the human embassy on Valthor Prime. His assistants tried to convince him to send a representative instead. But he refused. This required his personal presence. This required humility. Ambassador Junho Choi met him at the embassy entrance. Torvin had expected to face Admiral Jiwoo Park. She was the warrior who had delivered the ultimatum. But Jiwoo was not there. Only Junho, young and diplomatic. The message was clear. This was no longer a military matter. This was politics and negotiation. The terms were presented on a simple data pad. Torvin read them carefully. The Vrexian Dominion would formally apologize for the New Sol massacre. They would pay 2 trillion galactic credits in reparations. Earth would receive a permanent seat on the Council Security Committee with full veto power. All restrictions on human technological development would be lifted. And humanity could establish defensive pacts with any species without Council approval. Torvin wanted to negotiate. Surely some compromise was possible. The reparations were too high. The veto power was too much. But when he looked into Junho's eyes, he saw no room for discussion. These terms were final. Accept them or watch the Ghost Fleet visit more worlds. Torvin signed the document. He returned to the council chambers and presented it for ratification. The vote was quick. Every member approved. They had no choice. The alternative was unthinkable. But something unexpected happened in the weeks that followed. 17 minor species approached humanity seeking defensive alliances. These were civilizations that had been oppressed by the major powers for generations. They had watched humanity stand up to the council. They had seen humans fight for justice and win. Now they wanted that same protection. The Miralan Commonwealth sent their diplomats to Earth. The Zenthari Collective requested meetings. The Orlean Confederacy proposed mutual defense treaties. One by one, species that had suffered under the old order reached out to humanity. Foreign Minister Sua Lim handled these negotiations personally. She was careful and thoughtful. Earth did not want to become another oppressor. They did not want an empire. What they wanted was genuine cooperation between equals. The treaties were fair and balanced. Humanity would defend these species from aggression. In return, they would establish trade agreements and share cultural knowledge. No species would be forced to do anything. No one would lose their sovereignty. It was a partnership, not a conquest. Science Officer Jae Sung-yoon established the first joint research initiative. Human scientists worked alongside alien researchers. They shared knowledge freely. Humans learned about exotic physics from species who saw reality differently. Aliens learned about human innovation and determination. Both sides benefited. The balance of power in the galaxy was shifting. The old order, where might made right, was crumbling. A new system based on mutual respect and cooperation was emerging. And at the center stood humanity. Not as conquerors, but as protectors. 6 months after the retaliation, Dr. Yuna Kim published a research paper that shocked the scientific community. She revealed that humanity had been holding back significantly. The weapons used against the Vrexians and Tholaxians were first-generation technology. They were powerful, but they were not the best humanity could create. Admiral Changmin Baek, Chief of Naval Research, confirmed this during a classified briefing to the Council. He explained that human research facilities were already testing second- and third-generation systems. Antimatter catalyzed fusion drives that made current engines look like toys. Dimensional fold weapons that could strike targets in parallel universes. Artificial intelligence warfare systems that could coordinate millions of drones simultaneously. None of these advanced weapons had been necessary. Humanity used only the minimum force required to achieve their objectives. They could have done far worse. They chose not to. Strategic Intelligence Director Hwa Young Kim revealed the final piece of the puzzle. For 50 years, humanity had deliberately appeared weaker than they actually were. Every insult tolerated, every petition denied, every slight endured. All of it was documented and studied. Humanity was not being weak. They were being patient. They gathered data on every species. They learned the strengths and weaknesses of every military force. They waited for the inevitable moment when someone would push too far. When that moment came, humanity was ready. The galaxy realized it had been living on borrowed time. Humanity could have conquered everyone years ago. They had the technology. They had the weapons. They had the tactical knowledge. But they chose peace until peace was no longer possible. They chose justice over revenge, and that restraint made them more terrifying than any conqueror could be. 10 years passed. The galaxy had fundamentally changed. The Galactic Council still existed, but it operated differently now. Decisions were made through genuine consensus. Minor species had voices that mattered. Bullying was no longer tolerated. When disputes arose, they were resolved through negotiation and compromise. Admiral Jiwoo Park now served as Earth's permanent representative to the Council. On the 10th anniversary of New Sol, she addressed the assembled chambers. Her speech was brief. She spoke about the cost of arrogance, the value of restraint, the necessity of justice. She reminded the Council that humanity had demonstrated mercy even in retaliation. They destroyed military forces but preserved civilian lives. They could have killed billions. Instead, they removed the ability to harm others while leaving populations intact. But she also delivered a warning. The Ghost Fleet remained active, watching, waiting. Humanity would not seek war, but neither would they tolerate injustice. They had proven they could dismantle any military force in the galaxy. The question was whether the galaxy had learned its lesson. The answer so far was yes. No species had challenged humanity since the Tholaxian disaster. No one mocked human petitions anymore. When humans spoke in the council chambers, everyone listened carefully. On Earth, monuments were erected to remember New Sol. 3 million names were carved in black stone towers. Children learned their stories in schools. The military oath now included a pledge to protect the innocent and seek justice for the wronged. The dead were not forgotten. Daehyun Cho, the defense coordinator who survived the New Sol attack, returned to the rebuilt colony as governor. The new settlement was beautiful. Human and alien architecture blended together. Gardens grew where cities had burned. Children played in parks where evacuation ships had once launched desperately toward space. Every year on the anniversary, representatives from 17 species gathered at New Sol. They honored the fallen. They remembered the cost of cruelty, and they recommitted to the principles of mutual respect and justice. The story of humanity's retaliation became legend across the galaxy. Military academies taught it as a case study. Young officers learned about strategic patience and overwhelming execution. They learned that true strength was not just the capacity for violence, but the wisdom to use it judiciously and the restraint to stop once objectives were achieved. The Vrexian Dominion never recovered its former military power. Their people redirected resources toward culture and science. A new generation of Vrexians grew up in peaceful cooperation with humans. The old hatreds gradually faded. Young Vrexians visited New Sol to pay respects and learn from history. 50 years after the retaliation, a historical archive was established on a neutral world. Curator Mi-sun-oh oversaw a special exhibit about the events that reshaped galactic civilization. The centerpiece was a holographic recording of Admiral Jiwoo's original ultimatum and her transmission during the retaliation. Visitors from 1,000 worlds watched in silence. They saw the human admiral deliver her cold judgment. They saw footage of the Ghost Fleet's devastating precision. They saw the terror in the council chambers as beings realized they had awakened something they could not control. On the exhibit wall, a single sentence was inscribed in every known language. When humanity asks for justice, it is not a request. It is a warning. The terror that once gripped the council had transformed over time, first into understanding, then respect, finally genuine cooperation. The lesson remained clear. Humanity's patience was vast but not infinite. Push them too far, and they would demonstrate exactly why their species survived and thrived on a dangerous world, overcoming every challenge that evolution could create. The galaxy learned that humans were not conquerors. They were not interested in domination, but they would protect their own. They would demand justice, and they would never forget those who harmed innocent people. In learning this lesson, the galaxy became better. Stronger species began protecting weaker ones. The powerful started listening to the powerless. Justice became more important than strength. And cooperation replaced domination, all because humanity refused to accept that might made right. All because 3 million deaths were not forgotten. All because one species decided that patience had its limits and justice was worth fighting for. The Ghost Fleet still patrols the stars, hidden in subspace, watching over humanity's allies, ready to respond if anyone forgets the lesson written in fire across Rexian space and Tholaxian pride. But mostly, they remain silent. Because the galaxy remembers, and in remembering,